I thought kindness was just kindness. I never knew it could cost me my heart. It was supposed to be temporary. 3 months at Ashford Estate, working in the main house while they renovated the east wing. I needed the money. My mother's medical bills weren't going to pay themselves, and the temp agency promised good wages for anyone willing to work in the countryside for the summer. I wasn't looking for anything. Not love, not romance, not even friendship. I was just trying to survive. The estate was massive, the kind of place you see in period dramas, with manicured lawns that stretched forever and gardens that looked like paintings. I worked in the housekeeping staff, cleaning rooms that were bigger than my entire apartment back in the city. The other staff were polite but distant. Everyone knew their place. Everyone followed the rules. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't make eye contact with the family. Stay invisible. I was good at being invisible. That's probably why I noticed him. He worked in the gardens. I'd see him every morning when I opened the kitchen windows, already kneeling in the flower beds or trimming hedges near the south lawn. He wore the same faded work clothes every day, dirt under his fingernails, sweat on his forehead by midday. The other staff barely acknowledged him. The gardeners were considered even lower than the house staff, manual laborers, temporary workers. But something about him caught my attention. Maybe it was the way he worked. Careful, deliberate, like he actually cared about every plant, every bloom. Or maybe it was the way no one else seemed to see him at all. It was the third week of July when I first spoke to him. The heat that summer was brutal, the kind that made your clothes stick to your skin and turned the stone hallways into ovens by afternoon. I was carrying linens across the courtyard when I saw him. He'd been working since dawn, replanting the rose garden near the fountain. His shirt was soaked through with sweat, his face was flushed, and no one had brought him water. I don't know why it bothered me so much. Maybe because I knew what it felt like to be overlooked, to work until your body ached and have no one notice. I went to the kitchen and filled a pitcher with cold water, added ice, grabbed a clean glass. Mrs. Hudson, the head housekeeper, gave me a look. "That's not your job," she said. "I know," I replied. I carried it outside anyway. His shadow fell across the dirt. His eyes were striking, dark blue, almost gray in the sunlight. There was surprise in them, and something else I couldn't name. "I thought you might be thirsty," I said, setting the pitcher and glass on the stone bench nearby. He stared at me for a moment, like he wasn't sure if I was real. "Thank you," he said, quietly. His voice wasn't what I expected. Educated, soft, not the rough accent I'd heard from the other groundskeepers. I nodded and turned to leave. "Wait," he called. I stopped. "What's your name?" "Emma," I said. "Emma," he repeated, like he was testing how it sounded. He hesitated, just for a second. "James," he finished. I smiled. "Nice to meet you, James." That was the beginning. After that, I brought him water every day. It became routine. I'd finish my morning tasks, fill the pitcher, and bring it out to wherever he was working. We didn't talk much at first, just polite exchanges. "Hot today. The roses are looking beautiful. Thank you for this." But slowly, something shifted. He started waiting for me. I'd see him glance toward the house around the time I usually came out, and when I appeared, there'd be this small smile on his face. Relief, almost. Like he was the best part of his day. "You don't have to keep doing this," he said one morning, wiping his forehead with his sleeve. "I know," I replied, "but everyone deserves kindness." Something flickered in his eyes. Pain, maybe, or guilt. "Not everyone thinks that way," he said softly. "Then they're wrong," I said. He looked at me for a long moment. "You're different from the others." "So are you," I said before I could stop myself. His smile was sad. "You have no idea." I started staying longer. 5 minutes became 10. 10 became 20. We'd talk while he worked, his hands in the soil, my back against the stone bench. He asked me about my life, where I was from, why I came to Ashford. I told him about my mother,
The hospital bills, the tiny apartment we shared, how I was saving every penny to get us somewhere better. She raised me alone, he explained, worked 3 jobs to keep me in school. Now it's my turn to take care of her. That's admirable, he said, his voice genuine. Not many people would sacrifice like that. She's my mother, I said simply. It's not a sacrifice, it's love. He was quiet for a moment, his hand stilling in the dirt. You're lucky, he said finally, to know love that uncomplicated. I wanted to ask him what he meant, but something in his tone made me hold back. Instead, I asked about him, where he learned to garden, how long he'd been at Ashford. His answers were always vague, careful. I've always loved plants. There's something honest about them. You give them what they need, and they grow. No pretense, no expectations. Unlike people? I asked. He smiled. Exactly, like people. But plants don't lie about what they are. I thought about that a lot afterwards, the way he said it, like he knew something about lying, about pretending to be something you're not. But I didn't push. Everyone had their secrets. I had my own, too. The truth was, I was starting to look forward to those moments in the garden more than anything else in my day, more than my paycheck, more than my day off, more than the letters from my mother telling me she was proud. James made me feel seen, not as the temp worker, not as the girl who cleaned toilets and changed sheets, but as Emma, just Emma. He listened when I talked, really listened. His eyes never wandered, he never interrupted, and when he spoke, it was thoughtful, measured, like every word mattered. Do you ever feel trapped? He asked one afternoon, surprising me. We were sitting in the shade of an old oak tree. He'd finished replanting the herb garden, and I'd convinced him to take a real break. Trapped? I repeated. By circumstances, he clarified, by other people's expectations, by the roles we're supposed to play. I thought about it. Every day, I admitted. I love my mother, but sometimes I wonder what my life would be like if I didn't have to choose between her and my own dreams. What would you do if you could choose anything? I'd study literature, writing. I used to write stories when I was younger. Nothing fancy, just thoughts, feelings, characters who felt real. Why did you stop?
Life, I said. Money, responsibility. He was quiet, his eyes distant. I understand that, he said. Giving up who you are for who you're supposed to be. Is that what you did? I asked. He looked at me, really looked at me, and for a moment I thought he might tell me something true, something real. But then he shook his head. It's complicated. I let it go, but I filed it away. Another piece of the puzzle that was James. The other staff started noticing. Mrs. Hudson pulled me aside one morning. You're spending a lot of time with that gardener, she said, her tone disapproving. I'm just being kind, I replied. Kindness is one thing, she said, but you need to remember your place and his. I wanted to argue, to tell her that people were people, regardless of their job or status, but I needed this position, so I nodded and said nothing. Still, I couldn't stop, not when I saw the way James's face lit up when I appeared, not when our conversations were the only things that made me feel alive in this place. Do you ever wish things were different? He asked one evening. We were walking through the garden together. The sun was setting, painting everything gold and orange. He'd finished work for the day, but neither of us wanted to leave. Different how? I asked. Your circumstances, your life. If you could change one thing, what would it be? I thought about it. I'd want my mother to be healthy, I said, so I could stop worrying, so I could just breathe. He nodded. And after that, what would you want for yourself? I laughed softly. That's a dangerous question. Why? Because once you start wanting things, it's hard to stop. He stopped walking, turned to face me. The evening light caught in his eyes, making them almost silver. What do you want, Emma? He asked quietly. My heart was pounding. We were standing too close, close enough that I could see the dirt still smudged on his jaw, close enough that I could smell earth and sweat and something else, something that made my breath catch. "I want to matter," I whispered. "I want someone to see me and think I'm enough, just as I am." His expression changed, softened. Something raw and unguarded crossed his face. "You are enough," he said. "You're more than enough." I didn't know what to say. No one had ever said that to me before. Not like that. Not like they meant it with their whole chest. "James?" "Emma." Mrs. Hudson's voice cut through the moment like a knife. I jumped back, my face flushing. She was standing on the terrace, her expression thunderous. "Inside now." I glanced at James. He'd stepped back too, his face carefully neutral again, but his hands were clenched at his sides. "I'm sorry," I mouthed. He just shook his head. I walked back to the house, my heart racing. Mrs. Hudson didn't speak until we were in her office. "This stops now. I don't know what you think you're doing, but you're crossing a line." "We're just talking," I protested. "You're a temporary worker. You have no future here. And fraternizing with the ground staff is not only inappropriate, it's human," I interrupted. "Treating someone with basic respect is human." Her expression softened slightly. "Emma, I understand, but this world, it doesn't work the way you think it does. There are rules, hierarchies, and breaking them only leads to pain." "For who?" I asked. She sighed. "For everyone involved." I didn't see James the next day, or the day after that. I brought water to the garden, but he wasn't there. Different groundskeepers were working the flower beds, older men who barely looked up when I approached. "Where's James?" I asked one of them. He shrugged. "Don't know any James." My stomach dropped. Had he been fired because of me? I asked Mrs. Hudson. She refused to answer. I asked the other staff. They avoided my eyes. It was like he had never existed. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Guilt ate at me. Had my kindness cost him his job, his livelihood? A week passed, then another. The garden work continued, but James never appeared. I started counting down the days until my contract ended. 7 weeks left, then 6, then 5. And then on a Tuesday morning in late August, everything changed. There was unusual activity at the estate. Cars arriving, staff rushing around, Mrs. Hudson barking orders. "The Duke is arriving today. Full house inspection. Everyone on their best behavior." I'd heard whispers about the Duke, the owner of Ashford Estate, a reclusive nobleman who rarely visited his properties. No one had ever seen him, at least not in the staff quarters. We lined up in the main hall, waiting to be presented. My heart was pounding. I'd never done anything like this before. The doors opened, and my world tilted. It was James. Not James the gardener. James in an expensive suit. James with his hair properly styled. James walking with the confidence of someone who owned everything around him. James who was apparently the Duke of Ashford. My legs almost gave out. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. He walked down the line, greeting each staff member briefly, professional, distant, nothing like the man I'd talked to in the gardens. When he reached me, he stopped. Our eyes met, and I saw everything. The guilt, the regret, the sadness. "Emma," he said softly. Just my name, but it broke something inside me. Mrs. Hudson stepped forward quickly. "Your Grace, this is Emma Clark, temporary housekeeping staff." He didn't look away from me. "I know who she is." The room went silent. I wanted to run, to disappear, to be anywhere but here. "We need to talk," he said quietly. "No," I whispered, "we don't." I turned and walked out. Didn't care about protocol, didn't care about my job, didn't care about anything except getting away from the man who'd lied to me for 2 months.
I made it to the garden before the tears came, the garden where we talked, where he'd pretended to be someone he wasn't, where I'd fallen for a lie. I heard footsteps behind me. Emma, please. I didn't turn around. You lied to me. I didn't lie. I just didn't tell me the truth. I spun to face him. That's the same thing.
He looked pained. I know it is. But please, let me explain. Explain what? I demanded. That you were playing a game? That you pretended to be a gardener for fun? That everything we talked about was fake? Nothing was fake, he said, his voice rising. Nothing about what I felt was fake. How can I believe that? Tears were streaming down my face now. How can I believe anything you say? He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. Because I'm standing here. Because I could have ignored you today, pretended we never met, but I can't. I won't. Why did you do it? I asked. Why pretend? He took a breath, let it out slowly. Because I'm tired, Emma. I'm tired of people treating me like a title, like a bank account, like something to use or impress or manipulate. When I'm here, I work in the gardens because it's the only place where I can be myself, where I'm judged by what I do, not who I am. So you used me, I said, to feel normal? No, he stepped closer. I didn't use you. I valued you. Do you know what it's like to have every conversation be calculated, every relationship be transactional, and then to meet someone who just saw me, who was kind without wanting anything in return? I didn't know who you were, I pointed out. Exactly, he said softly. That's why it mattered. I shook my head. You should have told me. When? He asked. After the first day? The first week? When would have been the right time to say, by the way, I'm actually the Duke and I've been lying about my identity? Any time would have been better than this, I said. You're right, he admitted. You're absolutely right. I was selfish. I wanted to keep that connection, keep being James, just James, because with you I felt real. But you're not James, I said. You're a Duke. I'm both, the Duke interrupted. The title doesn't erase who I am. It just complicates it. I wanted to stay angry, wanted to hold on to the betrayal. But looking at him now, I saw the truth, the same loneliness I'd heard in his voice in the garden, the same pain. What do you want from me? I asked quietly. He was quiet for a long moment. I want what we had, real conversations, honest moments, someone who sees past all of this. I'm nobody, I said. I'm a temp worker with a sick mother and no prospects. You're a Duke. This doesn't work. Why not? He challenged. Because I live in reality, I said, and in reality, people like you don't end up with people like me. What if I don't care about that? Then you're naive or cruel, because you know as well as I do that this would never be accepted. Your family, your peers, society, they'd destroy me. His jaw clenched. I wouldn't let them. You couldn't stop them, I said, and eventually you'd resent me for it, for being the reason you had to choose between your world and whatever this is. Emma! I need to think, I said. Please, just give me space. He looked like he wanted to argue, but finally he nodded. Okay, but Emma, I paused. Nothing about how I felt was a lie. Everything I told you, everything we talked about, that was real. I didn't respond, just walked away. The next week was torture. I avoided everywhere I might see him, worked different shifts, took my meals in my room, but I couldn't stop thinking about him, about us, about the impossibility of it all. Mrs. Hudson was surprisingly gentle. He's asked about you, she said one evening. I don't care, I lied. Don't you? She sat down across from me. Emma, I've worked for the Duke's family for 30 years. I've seen him grow up, seen him shoulder responsibilities that would break most people, seen him sacrifice his own happiness over and over for duty. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because in all those years, I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looked at you in that garden, and I've never seen him fight for something he wanted. He's always just accepted, endured, but he's fighting for you. It doesn't matter, I said. It can't work. Maybe, she said, but don't you owe it to yourself to find out? You've spent your whole life putting everyone else first, your mother, your responsibilities. When do you get to choose what you want? Her words haunted me. 3 days later, there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find an envelope, expensive paper, my name written in elegant handwriting. Inside was a letter. Emma, I've been thinking about what you said, about reality, about the impossibility of us. You're right. On paper, this makes no sense. Our worlds are different, our circumstances are different. Everything about this is complicated. But I've spent my entire life doing what makes sense, choosing duty over desire, responsibility over happiness, playing the role I was born into, and I'm tired. I'm tired of people treating me like a title, like a bank account, like something to use or impress or manipulate. When I'm here, I work in the gardens because it's the only place where I can be myself, where I'm judged by what I do, not who I am. You used me, asked. What I want is you, not despite who you are, but because of it, because you're kind, because you're real, because you see people as people, not as roles or ranks. I'm not naive. I know choosing you would be difficult. Society would judge us. My family would object. There would be consequences. But I'm willing to face them. The question is, are you? I'm not asking you to decide right now. I'm asking you to consider that maybe, just maybe, we get to write our own story. Maybe we get to decide what's possible. Meet me in the garden tonight at sunset. If you come, I'll know you're willing to try. If you don't, I'll understand. But know this, you changed my life, Emma. You showed me what it feels like to be seen. And regardless of what you choose, I'll always be grateful for that. Yours, Alexander. His real name, not James, Alexander. I read the letter 3 times, cried through all of them. Mrs. Hudson's question echoed in my head. When do you get to choose what you want? I thought about my mother. She'd raised me to be strong, independent, to never compromise myself for anyone. But she'd also raised me to be brave, to take chances, to believe in love. And despite everything, I did love him. The gardener, the Duke, James, Alexander, all of him. The question was whether love was enough. Sunset came. I stood in my room watching the sky turn orange and pink. The garden was visible from my window. I could see him standing by the fountain, waiting. My hands were shaking. My heart was racing. Choose, I told myself. For once, just choose. I put on my coat and walked downstairs, through the kitchen, out the back door, across the courtyard. He saw me coming. Relief washed over his face. I stopped a few feet away. This is insane, I said. I know, he replied. People will talk. They'll judge me. They'll make my life hell. Probably, he agreed. Your family will hate me. Some of them, but not all, and not forever. I don't fit in your world. Then we'll find a new one, together. I shook my head, but I was smiling, crying and smiling. You're crazy. Maybe, he said, but I'd rather be crazy with you than sane and alone. He took a step closer. Emma, I'm not promising this will be easy. I'm not promising it will be perfect, but I'm promising I'll fight for us every single day if you're willing to try. I looked at him, really looked at him, past the title, past the wealth, past everything else. And I saw the man who'd worked in the gardens, who'd listened to my stories, who'd made me feel seen. Okay, I whispered. His eyes widened. Okay? I must be crazy too, I said, but yes, okay, let's try. He closed the distance between us. His hands came up to frame my face, gentle and reverent. "Thank you," he breathed, and then he kissed me, soft and sweet and full of promise. It didn't solve everything. We still had obstacles ahead, conversations with his family, adjustments to make, society to face. But standing there in the garden, his arms around me, I thought maybe Mrs. Hudson was right. Maybe we did get to write our own story. And maybe, just maybe, kindness really could change everything. The next morning, I gave my notice, not because Alexander asked me to, because I chose to. I'd saved enough for my mother's treatments, enough to keep us going while I figured out what came next. Alexander arranged for my mother to receive the best care, not as charity, as respect, for the woman who'd raised someone as remarkable as me, he said. We took things slowly, dates in quiet places, long conversations, learning each other honestly this time, no pretense, no games. His family was complicated. Some welcomed me, others made their disapproval clear, but Alexander stood firm, and slowly, grudgingly, they began to accept that this was real. I went back to school part-time, started writing again. Alexander supported every decision, every dream. It wasn't a fairy tale. We argued, we struggled, we had moments of doubt, but we also had something real, something worth fighting for. A year later, he proposed in the same garden where we'd met, where I'd brought water to a stranger, where kindness had started everything. "You gave me more than water that day," he said, on one knee. "You gave me hope. You gave me a reason to be myself. You gave me love." I said yes, through tears and laughter and complete certainty. Because sometimes the most impossible love stories are the truest ones. Sometimes kindness is enough. And sometimes the person you least expect becomes the person you can't live without. I never regretted bringing him that water, not once, because that simple act of kindness didn't just change his day, it changed both of our lives. If you liked this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Thanks.